And APB, American Protection Bureau, voted #1 best on Long Island for all your security needs. Call 631-390-9050. That's 631-390-9050. APB.
You need a body shop? You need engine repair? Auto Excellence, Collision Specialists, 631-261-6420. That's 631-261-6420. Auto Excellence. Jimmy, I gotta take a dump.
What?
No, I mean I need a dumpster.
Well, for all those needs, you need to call Big V Dumpster Rental, Long Island, New York, 631-900-DUMP. Elm Logistics, for all your logistic needs, call 631-299-3595. That's 631-299-3595. Elm Global Logistics, pride, performance, and partnerships.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the first edition of the newly rebranded Wrestling Remembered. This is ESO, and I'm here along with What a Day Joe Lowry and the player Benny Scala.
All right, what a day, what a day.
What's going on, guys?
Recovering from Thanksgiving, that's what's going on.
The
Feels
food
like the
dinner,
longest week ever.
Absolutely, I agree.
Oh yeah, what a week it's been.
So, Benny, what do you got for us?
I mean, as far as a joke, well, it's really not a joke. I got a new girlfriend. You know, one catch though. She's hooked up to a machine that keeps her alive. The refrigerator.
Whoa, there we go. Bada bing.
Ouch.
All right, gotta love that one.
Dinner show starts at 7.
There you go. Tip your waiters and waitresses.
Right, exactly.
If you don't know who that is the Man of 1,000 podcast. That's Benny Scala. Man, Benny,
Hardest working man in podcasting.
you really are. How many shows are you up to now?
I'll do 5 this week. Yeah, but I'm a regular on 5 different shows.
I want to know who your agent is. I want to talk to him.
Yeah, I'm getting paid in Panera bread coupons, so that's the only problem.
And then
Not even a hot dog and a handshake.
And then we have the newest member of the Wrestling Remembered cast. We have What a Day Joe. Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and plug your podcast?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm What a Day Joe. I'm a Boston transplant, now living in small town Centerville, Iowa. I have a podcast called What a Day in Centerville. I kind of touch upon a lot of entertainment, maybe some wrestling. There will be a big surprise tonight on my show. I go live at 7 o'clock Central Time on Facebook and YouTube. And we got the Twin Bill Baseball podcast with the player as well. And, of course, the one I'm most excited on, the new contestant on Monty and the Pharaohs, the 30. I'm gunning for that title tomorrow night. I can't wait to get over there. So
very competitive.
Let's talk about that. The #1 wrestling game show is on the Monty and the Pharaoh channel. It's on at 8 p.m. every Thursday, and it features the player What a Day, Phil DeCesare, and me. And the host is Michael Monty.
Yeah.
So right now, Phil is the champ. We're coming after him every week.
We're gunning for him.
Yeah, every week Mike comes up with some interesting questions, and we have to come up with some unique answers.
Yep. That's a great format. I love the format. You don't see that. So
yeah, and if anybody try that, just somebody gives you a subject totally out of the blue, and all of a sudden you have to think and process that and come up with a 90-second promo.
Yeah,
that's not easy.
Yep, no. I hear you.
No, but it's fun. Every week we seem to be getting
but it is fun, yes.
Better and better at it. And sometimes you have to pull stuff out of nowhere.
Oh yeah, same here. That's what I did last week with the Ultimate Warrior response. It was like lightning in a bottle. I catapulted to first place, got me to the finals, and I think SO got you. You had to go to the land of misfit toys or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That island he put you on when you're done.
Yeah, somehow I end up there often.
He spends a lot of time there, unfortunately. I think that's going to change tomorrow night. I have a feeling.
So
there you go.
Yeah, awesome.
Looking forward to it.
So, and then you have after the 30 on Thursdays, you have the Monty and the Pharaoh show, which streams live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And this week they have an amazing guest. I cannot wait to see this. This is
Oh,
I
time.
can't. When
Yep.
Mike told me this, I was in shock. He's got Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. That's going to be an amazing interview.
I mean, that's a man that does not give many interviews out.
No,
I'd love to talk with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. His matches with Ric Flair were just unbelievable. They actually wrote in the documentaries that I watched. They actually wrote out their matches, every single match, and they would call it each move was a chapter. All right, chapter 1, we're going to do this, then chapter 2, and it's an amazing story. So yeah, I can't wait to see Ricky the Dragon on there.
absolutely. And then of course we have what's going on Dan and Benny in the ring this week, playa.
Well, we had John. Actually, last night we had Sheldon Goldberg, who owner of New England Championship Wrestling. I'm thinking of John Callahan because every time we have an Irish guy on, we pop the ratings. And I said last night, before we introduced Sheldon, that if we hit number 1 in Ireland, that I'm going to legally change my name to Red McNulty. But we'll see. But yeah, we had Sheldon Goldberg, great guest. Owner and founder of New England Championship Wrestling, recently came up with a book called a wrestling novel called The Last Fall. Just a great guy. So yeah.
Yep, I've worked with him a few years back. He's a great guy, great promoter, everything. So he knows his stuff.
Yes.
So, you guys want to get on to what we're here for? Remembering
Let's do
wrestling's
it.
past. So,
Yeah.
Benny, why don't you start us off?
I think I got the first one here. So let's see. What do we got? We got Dateline November 20. So we're going to cover from November 27th until, which would have been Monday, through the 3rd, which would be Sunday. So November 27th, 1949. So what? 74 years ago. National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Champion Orville Brown forfeited the title to Lou Thez. Brown and Thez were supposed to have met the day before in a title unification match. I think Thez was the champion of something called the National Wrestling Association.
Yeah.
Which was, again, based out of the Midwest as well, I believe. But Brown actually suffered career-ending injuries as a result of a car accident. So Brown went on to become a promoter in the Kansas City region, and Thez, of course, became one of the greatest of all time. I think he held the title this first time for over 6 years. Back then, I mean, we see title changes so frequently now. I mean, when I was a kid, you never heard, well, Bruno has had the title 1,000 days.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was in years. And, and when somebody got the championship, you kind of figured, well, they're going to keep it for a while. But yeah, Thez held it until, I believe, 1955.
Unbelievable. That's a long time. Unreal. And that was mainly Midwest for those those days, right? For the NWA?
Yes.
They were pretty much, I mean, I know the territories were just beginning and all that, but
It was like the
NWA, you never saw it up in the Northeast where I grew up.
And Thez was one of those guys. I mean, they called him a hooker, not to be confused with the ones that I'm with all the time. But back in the day, there would be these guys who the term is go into business for yourself. Try to take the title away, and they knew that that wasn't going to happen with Lou Thez because the guy knew how to take care of himself.
Oh yeah,
and a lot of the champions in the NWA history were selected just because like a Harley Race or a Briscoe. That nobody's going to mess with these guys.
No. They were respected in and outside the ring.
Correct. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, different times back then.
Yes, sir.
Different.
Absolutely.
A lot different. That's good. 1949. Wow, that's way back.
Yes, sir.
Did you watch those matches back then, Benny? Were you there?
Yeah, we had a closed circuit on my cave. So yeah, we had a TV in the on the wall of the cave.
There was no color TV back then either.
No, but it was a flat screen though.
There you go. Nice.
Well, we're going to fast forward a lot of years now. We got 35, 36, 37 years.
37 years.
Yep. So I'm up now, right? Is this my little turn here?
That's you. Yes, sir.
All right. Obviously, Starrcade 86. Now, one of the things I loved about growing up in the Northeast, regulated to WWF back then, thank God for cable TV, because then I was able to capture, all Georgia Championship Wrestling, all World Championship Wrestling. So I was able to keep up to date, get the wrestling magazines one thing, but watching it live and all that stuff was different. So my thing here was I loved about Skywalker here, the Night of the Skywalkers. I mean, this is, first of all, you got to hand it to Jim Crockett Promotions. They putting on a pay-per-view on Thanksgiving night or closed circuit TV for this one is incredible. I can't believe they would actually get crowds to go fill an arena, 2 arenas at that, because this is a dual venue, by the way, Greensboro Coliseum and the Atlanta Omni, and have people in attendance and watching on closed circuit. That's amazing to me. And it's Thanksgiving. So obviously Thanksgiving in football, you know, in those days for Jim Crockett Promotion and those fans, it was Thanksgiving in wrestling. So that's a unique thing right there, right off the bat. Great card and so forth. You know, Tully Blanchard defeating Dusty Rhodes in a first blood match. How Dusty Rhodes didn't win that, I don't know. Dusty Rhodes, you've seen his forehead. I'm surprised he wasn't bleeding when he got to the ring. You know, and the Road Warriors, that was a huge match against the Midnight Express. And Cornette getting hurt and all that stuff. But what amazed me researching this was Road Warrior Hawk injured his leg in Japan a few weeks prior. He basically wrestled with a broken leg.
Oh, geez.
So that shocked the heck out of me. Ric Flair, NWA champion, going up against Nikita Koloff, the NWA US champion. At the time, this was a very rare champion versus champion match. I want to say this is probably one of the first times it ever happened in the NWA or probably in the industry. But again, holding the event on Thanksgiving Day was unbelievable. And you got to think about it. Starrcade was ahead of its time in regards to pay-per-views. We're talking pre-Mania days, going back to the first ones in the early 80s and so forth. I mean, they basically were the trailblazers in knowing how to capture an audience that could not be in attendance at 2 arenas at the same time. But, you know, let's put it on closed circuit TV or AKA pay-per-view, how it's known now. So unbelievable card and so forth. So, and of course, the big match there, because Nikita Koloff had to replace Magnum TA because of the horrific car injury.
Just after Magnum got hurt. Okay. This is when Nikita was now face at that point. Okay.
Yes.
So, you know, we're in 86 now. This happened. It was sad, you know, and I don't think during this time Magnum TA was even shown on TV or anything like that. Because I do know in the future he would show up at certain events.
Right. Not for a bit.
So he was greatly missed
on
the card because I think this might have been the card that he was probably going to win the title, or at least dethrone Ric Flair for a few and, you know, let Magnum carry the torch. But great card, dual arenas. You got to love it. Again, prelude to WrestleMania 2 when Vince McMahon tried it. He, you know, Long Island, Nassau Coliseum, and the other place in Michigan or whatever it was, where he had the 2 things, actually 3 arenas. What am I saying?
Chicago and MSG.
Yeah, Chicago and LA, right. So, I mean, Vince, you know, put his little circus type thing in and added another city. So, you know, it is what it is. I mean, it's hard to keep people's attentions because I think in between the matches in those days, they would drop the screen down and you'd watch that match on closed circuit. Then the screen would go up and then they'd have a match. So it was different back then, but great stuff though. Great stuff.
You know, Joe, you bring up a really good point though, as far as like having it on Thanksgiving and actually having it like not only having it on closed circuit, but you have it at 2 different arenas. Yeah. And I think it just really shows, because we were talking earlier about how the ratings, you know, how few less people are watching wrestling now than they did back in the day.
Right.
The people, especially the people in the Mid-Atlantic region, they took their wrestling seriously. And this is, you know, back in the 80s, I mean, I would have been shocked if they didn't have a sellout or close to it. They just love their wrestling that much. And it's almost sad, like when we see the ratings now and how few, I think it was 1.8 million people watch wrestling on a Monday night. And I mean, how many more millions watched in the 90s even more in the 80s? It's just sad.
A week. 12 the ratings are just they're not what they are, what they used to be. I just think the product is getting really saturated now. You know, AEW, what do you got? 3 shows a week now? WWE still with the 2 shows a week. It's a lot of wrestling.
I wouldn't even mind that much wrestling if everybody weren't trying to just outdo everybody, putting on something different type of product or, God forbid, tell a story. But
So
no,
I hear you.
One thing I I remember that Starrcade vaguely. Not that I got to watch it; I was young. But the thing I remember in the magazines was Jimmy Valiant sitting in the middle of the ring with getting his head shaved, and the look on his face, and it was like it was plastered through all the wrestling magazines, and that image still sticks out in my mind.
You talk about the wrestling magazines, which we call the After magazines now.
Yeah.
Bill After, great guy, good friend of mine, my mentor actually. I remember flipping open those magazines back then and seeing Cornette hanging off the scaffold going, this is a wrestling match? A scaffold wrestling match? Are you kidding me? Like, what is this company? I love it. I want to see more of it. And thank God cable finally rolled down my street because then I was able to see it. And the great thing about Jim Crockett Promotions, they would show you, they would tease a little bit of that stuff. The I Quit match, which we'll be talking about soon enough. But, they would start off with Dusty and Magnum or whatever, bleeding out, and you'd be like, what is that? And they would say that was from our Starrcade or whatever. So I loved it when they kicked the shows off like that. That was amazing.
But totally different approach. And the WWF had the same approach. You had a 1 hour a week TV show that the sole purpose was to, get people to buy tickets to wherever they were wrestling.
Yeah.
And that was just a tease. And you put on, they had all the squash matches. And the TV shows were typically squash matches and interviews.
Right.
And both were designed to get you to the arenas. And it's just now the TV show is at the arena.
I loved it when Howard Finkel would do the voiceover during like the first two matches. He'd be like, "Oh, wrestling returns to the Nassau Coliseum."
Absolutely, and how excited you got if it was like close to you where you could buy a ticket.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and of course I'm on the Boston affiliate, so I'll be like, "Oh, wrestling returns to the Boston Garden this Saturday." I'd be like, "Oh, I'm going! I can't wait! They're announcing it on TV." You'd think the whole world's watching that segment, but he separated the region part of it, so it was kind of neat. That was a good marketing tool. Big time for Vince McMahon.
Absolutely.
So let's move on 5 years to November 17th, 1991 in Detroit, Michigan. The WWF Survivor Series. This was the first Survivor Series where it had a singles match in it, and that match was the Undertaker against Hulk Hogan, and that was the Undertaker's first World Heavyweight Championship with a little bit of a help by a guy you might know. His name was Ric Flair.
Yeah.
And what that did was that ended up setting up something we're going to talk about later with that Tuesday night in Texas. That's coming up towards the end of the day. But what an interesting card they had. So it was a dark match. You had 4 Survivor Series matches, and smack in the middle, you had The Undertaker against Hulk Hogan. But let's check out this card because it's actually some of the friends of the show. So first match was Chris Chavis against Kato, better known as Paul Diamond, who we actually just had in studio a few weeks ago. He was really cool.
Express.
Yeah, I got the honor of getting to interview him. That was pretty cool. Me and Phil. Then you had Ric Flair, the Mountie, Ted DiBiase, and the Warlord against Roddy Piper, Bret Hart, Virgil, and the British Bulldog.
Wow.
Look at all those legends in there. Next, you had Sergeant Slaughter.
All Hall of Famers. They're all Hall of Famers, yeah.
Sergeant Slaughter, Jim Duggan, Kerry Von Erich, and Tito Santana against Colonel Mustafa, the Berserker, Skinner, and Hercules. Then you had
that's a dangerous alliance right there.
Yeah. We had the Undertaker against Hulk Hogan, and we know how that turned out when Ric Flair interfered on behalf of the Undertaker, getting him his first World Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah.
Wow, 1991, wow. And he's still relevant today.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Then you had the Nasty Boys, the Beverly Brothers, the Rock against the Rockers and the Bushwhackers. So a lot of our friends in there. And then Big Boss Man and a Legion of Doom versus Erwin R. Shyster, the Natural Disasters, and no, that's it. Just a Big Boss Man and Legion of Doom against the Erwin R. Shyster and the Natural Disasters. So it was definitely a card full of legends, and that it ended up, one of the things that ended up happening in that Nasty Boys Rockers match, that was the lead up for Shawn Michaels turning on Marty Jannetty. That's that thing where Shawn Michaels ended
barbershop.
Yeah, that was the thing that led up to the barbershop, which actually was filmed this week. It was filmed December 2nd, but it didn't play out until January. So I have a feeling we'll be talking about that a little bit more next month.
Absolutely.
The super kick heard around the world.
Yep, one of the most iconic moments in the history of
it is.
Wrestling.
Unbelievable. Marty Jannetty, Heartbreak Kid, broken up. Couldn't believe it. Unbelievable. Still shocked to this day that happened.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. All right, am I up again? Am I in the green again? Well, another Jim Crockett Thanksgiving Day Starcade, and I love that. This is the greatest title, The Gathering. You got to love The Gathering on Thanksgiving. Again, dual venues: Greensboro Coliseum, Atlanta Omni. Some of the things I found about this was actually the last closed circuit event, because everything went to pay-per-view after this era. Pay-per-view was new back then and so forth. So closed circuit TV now turned into pay-per-view. So they did this. So obviously one of the biggest matches, Tully Blanchard, we talk about it. I Quit match against Magnum TA. This is the one that when I got the wrestling books, Bruce and the Player, the first thing I saw was Magnum TA with that weapon he had in his hand, cutting Tully Blanchard open. And I think they used that in the beginning of the show the following week, and I was like totally blown away. A microphone in the ring. They had to say "I quit." I mean, you talk about a new inventive type match. That was unbelievable. I Quit match. You have to say "I quit." I mean, obviously it's used today, but that was again, iconic moment and so forth. Some of the other notes I got on this, you called it the Dusty finisher. Dusty Rhodes. Everyone thought he won the title. He walked out, won the title, but then later on that week on the show, a referee Tommy Young reverses his decision because Arn Anderson interferes, and the title is vacated. It's like, what? Now what? The dual location. Again, the WWF counted in that year with the 3 locations. We just talked about that. That was huge. And this was pretty much the birth of the original 4 Horsemen. It was only a couple months later that Flair, Ole and Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard with J.J. Dillon, the original 4 Horsemen, this is where they all started coming together.
Okay.
And they debuted a few weeks later. And, of course, how can we forget the night featured the match Jimmy Valiant with Miss Atlanta Lively, also known as Ronnie Hands of Stone Garvin. That was unbelievable. Dressed up like a woman.
Oh, that's right.
They battled the Midnight Express. And, to this day, even when I Googled it, I'm like, I forgot about that. You didn't see much about that.
Miss Atlanta Lively.
If you Google Miss Atlanta Lively and Ronnie Garvin's face pops up, I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, that's right. He dressed up like a woman. So, again, entertainment, pioneering. Again, Thanksgiving night. No football in that town. Everyone's either eating turkey, watching Jim Crockett's Starcade, The Gathering, or they're at the event. So great stuff there. 1985. I think that was a big year for pro wrestling as well, when the pay-per-view started booming on the scenes and so forth. And pretty much the only 2 programs that dominated cable at the time was Georgia World Championship Wrestling. And of course, WWF Championship Wrestling, All-Star Wrestling. So that change was happening right about now, especially with Vince McMahon during that time frame. Jim Crockett was battling him left and right for ticket sales, views, and all that stuff. So that was good stuff. That was a good retro fit for me. So I love that stuff.
Nice.
So let's I'm gonna bring that screen back up. I had lost my notes there for a minute on this next one.
There you go.
But
fast forward to 2016.
Yeah, 2016. This is another legendary one. 2 legendary women wrestlers. These women are going to be in the Hall of Fame, first ballot. Well, maybe not Mercedes Moné because of her reputation, but she should be. It was so Mercedes, then known as Sasha Banks, defeated Charlotte Flair to win the WWF Women's title, and I believe this was a Falls Count Anywhere match. So
yep, it was. Yeah,
I mean, these women tore down the house. This is the beginning of the women's era. These guys were showing what women's wrestling was about to become. It was somewhat established at this point, but this really solidified that future. And you look at how far they've come now.
Oh yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, of course, having Charlotte lose it in her hometown, the Queen Charlotte losing it in Charlotte. So a hometown hero never seems to work out in wrestling anymore.
Never does. Nope. It's almost like you can bet on it. It's just like based on.
It's like a curse. You do not want to have a match in your hometown because you're going to be on the wrong end of it. So good stuff. Good stuff.
All right. Well, now we're up to today, November 29th, 1994, Chicago, Chi-Town. Tito Santana wins the unheralded American Wrestling Federation AWF championship by defeating Cowboy Bob Orton. The AWF was a Chicago-based promotion that lasted all of 2 years. And a little bit different setup format for the matches. It was a boxing format. It had 4-minute rounds with a 1-minute rest period in between. And actually, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell was the first AWF commissioner, and he actually refereed this match. They closed down
the High Flyers, right?
Yep, with Greg Gagne. Yep,
Gagne,
yes, sir. And they closed their doors in December 1996, so what they lasted maybe 2 years for financial reasons. Although Tito did defend the title 10 years later against a recent Monty and the Pharaoh guest, Tom Brandy, a.k.a. Salvatore Sinceri in York, PA. Wow. Now, even though the promotion is relatively insignificant, I included this because, and I don't know how you guys feel, but I think Tito is one of the good guys of wrestling. And I do believe he should have gotten even if it was a brief run, he should have gotten a world title run in WWF. And I wanted to ask you guys a question. Sure. When Rick Martel and turned on Tito, there was I've heard Tito say that he approached Vince and he wanted to be the one to turn heel. Do you think that would have worked?
No.
Okay, well, I had a podcast with Tito Santana. I think he was my first guest like 5 years ago. I asked him that question about Strikeforce. It was his idea. He did want to turn heel.
Okay.
Because it was something, they wanted to make it different and so forth. They wanted the shock and awe. But it was his idea. He went to Vince with it and all that. Would have it worked? I don't know. Tito Santana, I don't think it would work. I think he's too much of a face. He just recently retired. He was a school teacher for years.
Right.
But one thing that I got out of my conversation with Tito Santana back in the day was there was almost like a lack of respect for him. I was there the night he beat Magnificent Morocco at the Boston Garden, and they brought a camera crew in, so something was going to happen. And believe it or not, the finish is not on tape because they ran out of film. Film. So the only thing you see is him giving Morocco a sunset flip, and that's it. And I'm like, you're telling me you send a film crew there to film, Tito winning the title, and they run out of film? Like, it didn't make sense to me. And he was dumbfounded by it as well. But he was a legend in Boston. There's no doubt about it. He did a lot of matches at the Boston Garden. He had a great one against Randy Macho Man Savage in '86. That was one of the big title matches. And back then at the old Boston Garden, you knew something was up when they added the TV lights and camera crews.
Right.
So you knew something was going on. You didn't know what until the match happened and the lights came on. It's like, okay, they're filming this for a reason. So,
but don't you think he was a great IC champion?
Absolutely.
Oh, one of the best. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So in my opinion, Tito Santana as a matador, as anything like that, would never, ever be able to pull off a face. The only way you'd be able to do something with him is put him under a mask, put some makeup on him, make him look like a bad guy. Because no offense to him, he just looks like such a nice guy too, and he is.
But I mean, I have to be honest too, though. On the flip side, I never thought Martel could pull off the heel turn. But boy, oh boy, did he prove me wrong. The model was a great heel.
Yeah, the model was he fitted perfectly for that.
Arrogance.
I don't know how they came up with it.
Arrogance, yeah.
Yep. I mean, that was Gorgeous George. Fast forwarded 50 years
with a French accent, right?
Yeah, with the perfume and everything. I was like, growing up, Tony Gurria and Rick Martel, they're my favorite tag team. I mean, the house exploded when they were in the ring all the time. Why they're not in the Hall of Fame? There's got to be something going on politically there because Rick Martel and Tony Gurria both deserve Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. 100%.
I don't know why they're not in there, but anyways, wow, good stuff though. The American Wrestling Federation. Wow, am I up again?
Yes, sir.
I am. All right.
Working hard.
This one I didn't see because this was in the height of the Monday Night Wars. So, unless you put two TVs together, which I did on occasion, I wouldn't have seen this unless I taped it. But it was hard to tape. You'd have to tape on one TV back then to do what they do now. But the Scott Hall situation, throwing the title, the World WCW TV Championship for the title. I don't know. To me, I wrote my thing. I call it a horrible storyline. I don't agree with it. It made no sense. I think they were just doing it because they, if you watched the documentary on WWE about the Monday Night Wars, they were actually in a room watching Raw to see what they did, and they would counter it and vice versa. So, anyways, nobody knows this, but on the other flip side, on that night on Raw, that was the infamous Stephanie McMahon almost marrying Test. And that's when Triple H came out, unveiled that video, that infamous drive-through wedding chapel in Vegas with an unconscious Stephanie McMahon. So I think that's probably why I didn't watch Nitro that night, because I was watching an unconscious Stephanie McMahon marry Triple H on TV in Vegas. So that was interesting. That was the height of the Monday Night Wars right there. Scott Hall, a former WWF guy, Razor Ramon, throwing a title in the trash can, and then you flip it over and you get Stephanie, the daughter of Vince McMahon, marrying a wrestler. So that was pretty interesting to me, though.
That World Television Championship, though, I mean, had a great lineage, and I thought it was a great championship back when guys like Arn Anderson held it, Steiner, Mike Rotundo. It was an important title. They just kind of really, they pushed it to the back.
Well, I loved it. That was the title back in the day that had like the TV logos on it, right? ABC, CBS, NBC. Yeah. Is it that was that title, right?
It had a great lineage, and I mean, you weren't getting unlike the IC Championship. The IC Championship when it was created, whoever got that was theoretically, next in line for the WWF Championship.
Yeah, there was always a stepping stone. Yep.
Yeah, but the NWA, they more use that U.S. title for the stepping stone. The TV title
was they had the national championship, the U.S. They had they had a lot of titles, but it seemed to work.
But it was territorial titles too.
Yes,
you know what I mean. Like they had such a vast geographical area to encompass, so you had to have those multiple champions because you couldn't put all champions on one card in a house show. They would all spread out, They would main event this town. Flair would do the big town, you get the
you had like the title in this town, right?
Yeah, Jake Roberts was a great TV title holder for them.
What I don't understand is why they disrespected the TV title in that fashion. Yeah. I understand the Hacksaw Jim Duggan angle. They were trying to do that comedy bit, but it fell flat. I mean, you had the WWE doing that hardcore title at the time, which was similar in the way that it was put together, but it seemed to work in WWF. It didn't work in WCW once it went over there. But like, as What a Day was talking about on that same day in Los Angeles, California, on Raw, Stephanie was supposed to marry her fiance Test, and lo and behold, out came Triple H with that video from the Chapel of the Bells in Vegas, revealing Stephanie had gotten married the night before, well drugged. What a night of wrestling! That I think all of us, everybody was watching Raw at that point. I think WCW was well on its downfall at that point, on that downward spiral.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that is the year that Raw finally went live every week. Because I think in '98 it was still they would do a live Raw, then they would tape the following day for the following week and all that stuff. And of course, we all know with Mankind winning the title, that was taped, and Tony Schiavone saying, "Don't turn the channel," blah blah blah. History was made. That's when the Monday Night Wars, when WWF finally catapulted over Nitro and all that in the ratings. But this was, that was great television back then. Yeah. Great television.
And even with a drugged up Stephanie McMahon, it's just like anything in Vegas, whatever it's just like the referee's decision. Whatever it is, the preacher's decision stood.
Yeah. Unless it's Tommy Young and a Dusty finish, then it's not.
There you go. My question was Stephanie and Triple H married by then? Were they married then?
No, they were married in 2003.
Yeah, they were. Okay, they weren't even together at that point. They were supposed. Yeah. He was supposed to still be with Chyna.
Yep, that's right. Yep. So that might have been the beginning. That might have been the start of it. You don't know what happens. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right?
Triple H, the smartest man in wrestling. He married the billionaire.
Yep.
There you go.
What do we got?
All right. Well, on November 30th, 1979, so 44 years ago, Antonio Inoki defeated Bob Backlund to win the WWF Championship. He'd vacate the title a week later after a rematch, which would go to a no contest due to interference from Tiger Jeet Singh. Inoki's win was never recognized, and I don't get that, by the WWF, and Backlund's reign remained intact. And I just want to put a little bit of perspective on Bob Backlund, another Monty and the Pharaoh phenomenal guest.
Yep.
And I love Bob Backlund. I think Bob Backlund was just, people say he was boring. No, he wasn't. He did what he was supposed to do. I mean, and he was over. If you watch any Bob Backlund championship match from Madison Square Garden, he was over. I mean, the people were really popping for him. The matches were always like top quality. And and when he lost his temper, it was even better because it happened so rarely that you thought like, oh crap, Backlund's pissed off. This is really important. But another perspective is that in that year, and this is according to WrestlingData.com, he wrestled 153 times. And record keeping in 79 is not what it is in 2023. Yeah. So I bet you he wrestled probably 200 times.
They wrestled.
Yeah, fast forward to
6 days a week. They wrestled. They wrestled 6 days a week.
At least. Yeah. So that would give you maybe 300 matches. But, in comparison, Roman Reigns has wrestled 11 times in 2023. So greatest of all time, my ass.
Yeah, no way. Bob Backlund, quick story on that. I met him at the Garden Raw. I think it was 2000. He was running for Congress in Connecticut. And I had a conversation with him, and I asked him, I'm an avid belt collector, by the way. So I asked him, where is that title that superstar Billy Graham ripped up? And believe it or not, his webmaster for BobBacklund2000.com, it's in his attic. It's in his attic in a box. He still has that title. And people call him all the time. They want the molds for it. They want they want the plating for it. It's replicated online and, Fandu and all those guys overseas. But you know that he has the actual belt. That's an incredible story right there. And Bob Backlund losing his temper. I grew up with Bob Backlund, and I respected the hell out of him. And he was a phenomenal athlete. I mean, the bridges, he was doing bridges before anybody else was. He did one against Magnificent Morocco. And when he arched his back and lifted Morocco up out of that pin, unbelievable. The crowd went ballistic. And you do a move like that, it's like secondary now. It's it's like clotheslines. Those used to be great finishers. Now they're just part of wrestling repertoire. And
the guy had superhuman strength, which I don't think is really appreciated. But I heard a story that King Kong Mosca tried to shoot on him, and that quickly ended. Backlund very quickly put him in his place. And another guy who, if somebody decided to go into business for themselves, they're going to be very sorry if they do it against Bob Backlund.
Exactly. And then fast forward, what was it 94? He turns heel he beats Bret Hart on Monday Night Raw to become a 2-time champion. It's like incredible.
I didn't like the fact that he had to drop it like a week later to Kevin Nash, and literally it was like a 9-second match. That part I didn't like. And one of the things, I don't know, I'm not too clear about it, but is that for whatever reason, it seems like now that Roman Reigns is chasing, now he's, his title reign is kind of amassing some time here. That they, in terms of longevity of former champions, you don't see Bob Backlund's name anymore. So I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, and then didn't Monty and the Pharaoh cover the fact that Backlund's name wasn't mentioned during the episodes?
And how could that be? I mean, they've never acknowledged that Inoki title. Now,
even if the Greg Valentine Madison Square Garden one in November, was it 81? Great, phenomenal card. And of course, they both wore black trunks, and Dick Kroll raised Greg Valentine's hand as the winner. There's pictures in wrestling magazines with Greg Valentine wearing the WWF championship and being proclaimed champion, never recognized on TV. He ended up winning it back a month later.
He defended it, didn't he?
The title was it was vacated. It was up for grabs. So he lost it in October of 81. November of 81 was that huge card where Morocco beat Morales for the Intercontinental title. It was a huge card.
Valentine, didn't he? Yep. He had defended the title at least once, didn't he?
I don't know. You'd have to look up and see if he did. I don't think he left the Madison Square Garden with the belt.
So I wonder if they're now saying that he did lose it in 79 to Inoki, and he lost it in 81, or maybe he didn't lose it in 81 to Valentine.
You do the Wikipedia searches and all that, and there's those asterisks and all that stuff. But the WWF is not WWE, is not recognizing that, and I don't know why. That's like weird storylines. Like, why would you just want to play that?
The WWF, WWE that was something I brought up a few weeks ago. When I was a kid, that was Andre the Giant had never been slammed and was undefeated, and all that. Hulk Hogan was brand new to the WWF. So
yeah. And they wrestled at Shea Stadium in 1980. They wrestled in Japan. They tore it up. One of the things that amazed me about Andre the Giant, I don't mean to get off subject, but when before Vince's father signed him, he was always getting beaten in Canada and body slammed. And Vince Sr., when he finally got a hold of Andre and gave him a contract and says, when we loan you out, you don't lose anymore. Because they started billing him as undefeated, never lost before and all that. But now you go on the internet, you can see matches from the 70s where he's actually jobbing to some of these Rougeau guys and all that stuff in Canada and France. And I'm like, wow, that's Andre the Giant. That's like 74, 75. Fast forward, 6-7 years when Vince Sr. gets a hold of Andre, bills him as the Giant. You're undefeated now, never been slammed, all that stuff. There was no internet back then. You didn't know. You only knew that Andre got slammed if you actually physically saw it.
If you were there at the matches, right.
And we all know about WrestleMania 3 and all that. And the referee did count to 3 when Hogan, felt, when Andre pinned him by accident. Even Andre had to stick up 2 fingers to tell the crowd it wasn't a 3 count.
I just think that, to me, Bob Backlund was a phenomenal champion, and I think it's just so disrespectful of the WWE to not acknowledge him. I don't know. I've heard it's a political thing. It's kind of like reminiscent of Bruno Sammartino. Bruno didn't like the product after a while, so he disassociated himself with it. Then he came around. He finally got in the Hall of Fame. Ironically, in 2013, that Hall of Fame class was huge. Donald Trump got inducted. Mankind Mick Foley got inducted, and then of course Backlund and Bruno Sammartino both got inducted that same night. So to me, that was a huge night and a huge thing for Bruno. And as you can see behind me, I got one of his robes that he wore in the ring. He only signed like 5 of them, and I was lucky to get one. So Bruno is, synonymous with wrestling. And my hero.
He was probably to me, honestly, pre-Hogan era, he got to be one of the greatest champions. I love Bob Backlund to death, but Bruno's reigns carried that company in the 70s. And
we had Sheldon Goldberg on Dan and Benny in the Ring last night. I think one of the questions I asked him is because Bruno's first reign was 7 years and 8 months, and he was just tired of wrestling 300 nights a year. Yeah. And he said, I gotta take some time off, so he dropped the belt to Koloff, who was just a transitional champion for Pedro. And then when Pedro wasn't drawing 3 years later, they said, "Can you come back for a year?" Okay, I'll come back for a year. And that turned into 3.5 years. And then he dropped it to Billy Graham. But you wonder if they had managed him properly. Yeah. How long assume the first reign, instead of wrestling 300 nights a year, he wrestled, just the big arenas, and maybe he did 125 matches a year. How long could he have been a champion continuously? It just boggles the mind, because here's a man who never, they never said, well, Bruno, you got to drop the belt. Bruno decided, I'm tired, I want to go home. He could have been champion for 15 years.
Easily. He sold out Madison Square Garden, 50 times?
187, 188, I think.
Unbelievable. Superstar Billy Graham did it too, He's, his 10-month reign sold out every show. He was dumbfounded as to why he had to lose to Backlund and so forth. So you don't know.
I agree with that too.
Bruno Sammartino, obviously, he carried that company. He catapulted that company. He was a spokesman for that company. In the 70s, when you mentioned wrestling, this is pre-Dusty Rhodes, pre-Ric Flair, it was Bruno Sammartino.
Well, I don't know if you remember, Joe, there was a commercial for Bally's back in the day, Bally's Park Place, and it was a bunch of guys in tuxedos singing. And it was like Walt Frazier, who else? Johnny Unitas, Phil Esposito, like all world-class athletes. Yeah. But the very first person that came out was Bruno.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. That was probably one of the first crossovers. It has to be wrestling going mainstream.
But Bruno was larger than life. That's like Bruno was. He was, and especially to the Italians in New York. He was. Sheldon said that people had 3 pictures on their walls in New York. The Pope, Jesus Christ, and Bruno.
I was fortunate enough to see him in '86 wrestle. He had a feud with Roddy Piper, and he had a cage match with Roddy Piper. And at the time it was February of '86, and the New England Patriots, just lost the Super Bowl to Chicago Bears. Piper comes out, puts up these Chicago Bears posters in the cage, so he's getting the heat. Bruno comes out and just slobber knocks his Piper. Piper's bleeding like probably the worst blade jobs I've ever seen, because he just was bleeding from head to toe, and he ended up sticking like the Refrigerator Perry's poster up his ass, and made him choke on Jim McMahon's poster in his mouth. And to this day, I can still hear my ears ringing from when Bruno was there. And Hulk Hogan was probably Bob Backlund. Those are the only times I heard my ears ringing leaving the arena, because the excitement that Bruno generated was just
and keep in mind, 1986. So Bruno, he won the title in May of 1963.
Yeah, he was
23 years old.
51 years old then.
Yeah, and the guy still. I mean, they probably could have given him the belt again. I mean, just unreal.
Amazing physical condition too for a guy that age back then.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
unbelievable. Good stuff. All right, where would we leave off? Where are we at now?
Yeah, it's
November,
you on 11/30.
98.
11/30, 98. Oh, okay, yeah. Here we go. So this was the Big Boss Man defeated Mankind ladder match that introduced the newly created Hardcore Championship. My notes on this. Let me get my glasses on this one. So let's talk about the Hardcore Wrestling Championship. It was considered hardcore rules, no DQs, no countouts, so long as a referee was present and so forth. Have we heard this before? Yes, folks. Fast forward many years, and what do we got? The 24/7 championship.
Right.
So, I remember Vince presenting Mick Foley with that championship and all that stuff, that newly created title. My thoughts on that was, again, the time frame, height of the Monday Night Wars, the getting creative and all that stuff. The Attitude Era is coming on, and people love those matches. The hardcore was generating excitement. I think ECW, which we'll talk about later on, was in its heyday at that time as well. So people love that hardcore action. So how do you justify that? Well, you create a hardcore championship. So at least once a week on TV or wherever you go, there's going to be, you're going to get tables, ladders, and chairs or something, or boiler room matches. And, they get creative and so forth. So to me, that was definitely Attitude Era stuff. It was a prelude to the 24/7 championship, because when you think about it, those types of rules that existed with the 24/7 championship. So, that's my opinion on it. I really think, honestly, it was just another Vince McMahon marketing tool. They still sell the belt online on www.com. So, that's my take on that. Again, I watched that. It was, it was a ladder match. You didn't see many ladder matches back then. You get the Michaels and Razor Ramon, but ladders were coming into their time here, and that was fitting for WWE to counter with that. So
I always
pretty
thought
good
it was
stuff.
kind of funny. You have this hardcore championship, but it's also kind of the comedy championship, because it's almost it's like it's so silly what they're doing, but then they go into these matches and they're the craziest bumps, the craziest things that they're doing. It's just like this, just a position there.
What I liked about it, though, is it put a belt on someone that normally would not have a belt, and I kind of like that.
Yeah. And those types of matches segued into that. What was that Super Bowl halftime match? The Rock and Mankind, they had an empty arena match during Super Bowl halftime.
Or the
you talk
grocery
about
store match.
creative. The grocery. Oh yeah.
Oh jeez.
With Booker T and Stone Cold, right? That one. Yeah. And then I just saw a clip the other day. It was the anniversary of Booker T and Stone Cold playing bingo with the old ladies at the nursing home. And Booker T pretends he steals the old lady's numbers and says he won. And the next one is, the next letter is, Stone Cold 316. And Booker T's face lights up and he's like, oh no. And they start going at it around the old ladies. I mean, just the craziest stuff back then. Crazy stuff.
But how entertaining was it? Like,
I watched
it.
Oh yeah. I mean, Bruce, you mentioned the grocery store match. I mean, the milk. I mean, you got to wonder, how much did they pay to rent out that grocery store and destroy all that produce and everything? It's just crazy.
They had all the they just went nuts too in a real grocery store. That was
Unbelievable. Yeah, they did crazy stuff like that. That's what you did. That's what you did.
So let's do one more topic, and then we have to take a quick break, and then we come back. We can finish it up. So on same date in 1973 in Ontario, Canada, Jason Resso was born. He's later became known to us as Christian or Christian Cage, and he's got this crazy celebrated career, including 2 WWF World Heavyweight Championships, 9 tag team titles, and he's currently an AEW superstar holding the AEW TNT title. And happy birthday, Christian! But overall, I gotta say, I'm a little surprised this one came to me because, as Benny knows, I'm not the biggest Edge and Christian fan. I did enjoy them when they first came in. However, I think I never had put Christian. I think Christian's doing closer to a main event level work than I ever expected him to. I always felt he was behind Edge, and I was never an Edge fan. So were they great talents? Absolutely. I think their peaks were the tag teams. I think that's where they belong. I really enjoyed that 5-second pose, Edge and Christian, and the Brood, Edge and Christian. The later on, I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of those guys. Great wrestlers, but
yeah. I mean, Christian and Edge, obviously Christian synonymous with the Brood, his tag team. But come on, TLC with the Dudley Boys and the Hardys, those matches were just off the charts. To this day, I'll show my girl, fiance Joanne. I show her that match all the time. The spear off the top of the ladder. Some of the stuff they do is just absolutely insane. And Christian now in AEW, I think he's more in his prime now than he was back then. He's getting a microphone. He's getting that TV time. And the script writing, I don't know if they're doing this off the cuff over there, but that stuff's getting personal, talking about Edge and his family, and maybe Beth would have been better off with him. Just the craziest stuff. Tony Khan is letting him go loose. I think it's a great thing. At the end of Edge's career, they're going to get back together. They're going to have a tag team title run or something because people want to see it. And don't be surprised. The Hardys are around, and the Dudleys won't be too far behind, right? Bully Ray.
I don't want to see that the nursing home match. Come on.
No. I think they'd go all out. I think they would. You'd have to perform at that level if you're going to go back into that arena like that, because that's something that you can't fake the spear off the top of the ladder. You can't swanton off a balcony and stuff like that. Fans are going to want to see that if that match takes place. So. I hope they're ready for it. That'd be great if they do it.
Yeah, so, well, on that note, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about Stan Stasiak.
Ooh, love it.
We'll be right back.
The Monty and the Pharaoh Show is brought to you by...
Because wine is your second favorite 4-letter word. California wine, New York attitude. Good fucking wine.
Yeah.
Tired of that same old breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Same old tasting scrambled eggs, burger, that dinner steak, ribs, or pork chops. Why not add a little bit of spice or just a touch of heat to make the difference? Change that scrambled egg with a little bit of Johnny Fabulous's John Cena Sr.'s $1 Million Jalapeno Hot Sauce. Great on burgers, steaks, chops, and those barbecued ribs.
And Nitro's Garage for all your automotive needs. Call 646-675-2349. That's 646-675-2349. For all your automotive needs, Nitro's Garage. Ask for Jack.
Do you treat your dog as part of the family? Well, so do we. So why not celebrate your pup's birthday with the ultimate party box? Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Party Pup Info, and let us make your pup's party or any celebration perfection.
M&J Video Games and Collectibles. Sport and non-sport cards, wrestling items, autographed items. We buy, sell, and trade. M&J Video Games and Collectibles, located at 1049 Queen Street, Southington, Connecticut. Call us at 1-860-479-9223 or 860-93-GAMES. M&J Video Games and Collectibles.
We're going back.
Welcome back, my friends, to this show that never ends for all you Emerson, Lake, and Palmer fans. So on December 1st, 1973, in a stunning, I guess it would be an upset, Stan Stasiak defeated Pedro Morales for the WWF Championship, ending Pedro's almost 3-year reign. And the finish was a double pin, one of those, both shoulders were on the mat, and but no winner was declared at the arena. Stasiak was actually declared the champion on TV that weekend. And now Stan would drop the title of Bruno, another transitional champion. He held the belt for 9 days at Madison Square Garden. And somehow in those 9 days, Stasiak managed to have at least 11,000 photos taken of him. Because everywhere you go on social media, there's a different picture of Stan Stasiak. So 9 days is what? 216 hours? He must have spent maybe slept for 20 of them, 196 hours having pictures taken of him. And that maybe he knew that, I'm only going to have it 9 days. Might as well get my money's worth.
The first thing that comes to mind for this one is 11,000 photos taken of him in 9 days. And he wasn't declared the winner at Madison Square Garden, but maybe on TV. But they didn't have 11,000 people at the TV tapings, that's for sure. Because I'm thinking everybody at the Garden probably took a picture.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. That's how do you even calculate that in those days? I don't know. 11,000.
That was my estimate, but I mean, there's tons of pictes, but
there's no two alike. That's the funny part. Like every time you pull them up, it's a different picture.
Yep. And I see those pictures all the time in the wrestling magazine with the Grand Wizard. That was his protege, and God love him. He finally had a WWF champion. Of course, this is pre-Superstar Graham days, but that's amazing that they would actually crown the champion on TV. Like that's pretty creative. What was the reasoning? Do we know why Bruno needed 9 days off? Was it a scheduling?
Well, I mean, the same old thing. You're not going to have Pedro and Bruno fight. So, and supposedly, and this is what I heard, is that Stasiak did not know that he was going over until he showed up at the arena that night, which is absolutely amazing. When you think about what these guys can do, we talk about on the 30, that we have to cut a promo. Off an an unknown or unknown to us subject until that moment. Right. But when you think about what these guys have to perform in front of thousands of people, and then they change the game plan when by the way you're going to win tonight. Just the fact that they can do stuff like that, just amazing.
Yeah, I wonder whose call that was. Obviously, Vince Sr. was running the show back then, so storyline's kind of weird. Something must have happened.
Yeah, because I mean, typically, when Billy Graham beat Bruno, in April of '77, he was told to the day when he was going to drop the title to Backlund. So I mean, McMahon had it laid out to the day.
Yeah, that's crazy, unbelievable. All right, moving on. I think I'm next, right? December 1st, '98, New Haven, Connecticut. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mankind defeated The Rock and The Undertaker. And, of course, the infamous crucifixion segment ended up happening. The Druids come in and do their thing, and they wrap Stone Cold on this cross with the music playing that synonymous with church and death and all that stuff. The WWF denied that it was a crucifixion episode, but, you could see clearly what was going on. I think this was obviously in the height of the Attitude Era. The Monday Night Wars was another gimmick to try and get viewers to watch, which they did.
Yeah, what did they call the person at the head of the ministry before they revealed it was Vince McMahon? They were calling him.
Not Darkness. Oh my God, I was at the Raw that day. Unmasked him. He did it in Boston at the old Fleet Center. Yeah, he was oh my God, I forget the name.
Yeah, because at this point, I don't think that they had decided it was Vince McMahon. I think that ended up being like a
Darkness or something. It was some weird thing. But yeah, it was me. Vince McMahon and the Infant. It was me.
it was just the ministry at that point, not the corporate ministry.
Yep. So in the Druids and all that, this was that time frame where I think Vince McMahon put that video out that telling them that the new Attitude Era is here. And you're going to see more risque stuff. You're going to see more just like he turned it into the sports entertainment company right about this time where he was telling the viewers at the beginning of Raw that, hey, we're going to get, almost rated R material now. You're going to see a lot more skin. You're going to see a lot more violence because that's what we do. We entertain. You put that entertainment in WWE at this point, and this was part of it. And I think there was apologies that they had to issue to the TV guys over on USA Network at the time. There was a guy that wrote for TV Guide who swears up and down that it was a crucifixion thing, and they got a bad write-up over it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they denied it. They said, no, it was just a entertainment segment and all that. And that was just one of many, when you think about it.
Jerry
So,
Lawler and his puppies.
And the puppies, yeah, exactly.
Mae Young giving birth to a hand. I mean, geez.
Yeah. Oh, my God, that episode, unbelievable. Mark Henry at his finest right there. Oh, Mae Young.
Sexual chocolate.
Fabulous Moolah, Pat Patterson and Briscoe giving birth. Like, what the hell? I mean, that was just crazy stuff. But that was the year. That was the year they won the ratings war at January 98. Worcester Centrum, a taped episode. We mentioned it earlier. Mankind winning the title with the help of Stone Cold and all that stuff. All the wrestlers were there. And that's when everything turned. That's when Raw started beating Nitro.
Yes.
And this was just another one of those storylines where we're going to get more creative and why not have a live crucifixion on TV? So, and then deny it. But whatever it is, it's sports entertainment. Attitude Era at its finest.
All right. So 30 years behind that, December 2nd of 1968, Dory Funk Jr. and Antonio Inoki fight to a 60-minute draw for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And this was the first NWA title match in Japan since 1957. Many more after that, but I actually met Dory at his wrestling school, the Funking Conservatory. Him and his wife are really, really nice people. Marty Funk and Dory, great people. And at that time, he was planning his 80th trip to Japan. And I mean, I haven't even been to 7-Eleven 80 times.
Big money over there back then for Japan. They loved them over there.
Yep.
I mean, they if you watch some of the videos and even the magazines, guys like Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, they get off the plane. They're like mega superstars over there.
Yeah,
the
Road Warriors. The Road Warriors.
Yeah, the Road Warriors
would shut down the airport.
Yep.
I mean, even some of the guys like a Davey O'Hannon, who wasn't a main eventer, but like they would really look forward to those Japan trips because they got paid. I mean, big time.
It was a different element over there. Even the WWF had the Japan tours and all this stuff. Backlund was over there. I mean, Hogan before he won before he made his WWF debut for the Hulkamania, he was the International Wrestling Grand Prix champion. You know, that was the last photo with him before he moved on to the WWF back then. But yeah, this was Japan is great place for wrestling back then. They were treated like royalty over there.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to December 2nd in 1973 in Kagoshima, Japan. We had Giant Baba defeating Jack Briscoe in a 2 out of 3 falls match to capture the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Baba would lose the title back to Briscoe a week later, but he was a 3-time NWA champion. All of his reigns were a little limited to a week or two, but it was known that Baba was always a consummate professional and had the full trust of the National Wrestling Alliance. So one of the things, Baba had his own stuff going on in Japan. He couldn't really be part of the NWA full time, but it was nice of the that cross promotion, and just like with the rest we were talking about, the wrestlers going over to Japan had all the respect. Baba had that same respect in this country with when he came over.
Yeah, you think about it, like these guys, like for the first one was Briscoe. Yeah. I think he won the title 3 times. His combined reign was 19 days. It was 7 days, 7 days, 5 days. Once to Briscoe, twice to Harley Race. But it's one of these things they like these guys come to Japan, they wrestle Baba, they lose, then they make the do the lap around Japan, come back, and then they win it on their way home. It's like it's almost like they drop it off for dry cleaning or something like that. But I think it's a combination of, number one, that Baba was. I mean, Bruno absolutely loved Shohei Baba. And he trusted him. And the other thing is, not for anything, but like both Briscoe and Harley were, again, guys you couldn't mess with. They could take care of themselves. So it wasn't like, Baba was going to try to go into business for himself. But yeah, I mean, you wonder.
He was
Yeah.
wrestling royalty. Giant Baba was wrestling
Oh, yeah.
royalty. I mean, he was, even when he came over here, I remember watching him on TV. There was always presenting him with flowers. It was a respect thing.
Oh yeah.
But when NWA and all those guys would go to Japan, you knew the titles were getting dropped because it was a respect thing, and it was also because it drew the crowds.
Right.
They loved it.
Of course. Yeah.
The Tokyo Dome, all those places, Japan, all those places packed to the rafters.
You're getting packed when he's going for the championship,
Yeah.
and then it's going to be packed when he's defending it. It's great booking.
Yeah, but, everything's accessible to us now. There was no internet back then. You didn't know this occurred unless a wrestling magazine covered it, if they were even flying over to Japan at those times. But you didn't know about it. But the NWA was better than the WWF then because they recognized the championship changes over there. Unlike Inoki beating Backlund and all that stuff, and it's not recognized. At least the NWA recognizes it, so that's pretty cool.
You wonder why, Bruno made a Japan trip probably every year. You wonder why, and him and Baba were tight. You would have thought he would have dropped it, maybe in if he's doing a 2-week tour, dropped it and then gave it to him for a couple weeks, beat him in the return engagement, went home with it. But that never happened.
Well, it's funny because I don't know if you guys could see, I have some of the wrestling programs when I first went to the Boston Garden back in 1981 behind me. And they were owned back then by a Japanese organization. There was like a cooperative with wrestling in Japan and WWF and Capital Wrestling Corporation. So there was a connection there. If you could see right there, George Steele was the very first. That's from July of 1981. That was my first wrestling match at Boston Garden, going to see them. Second one was Backlund and Mosca. And then the third one was October, Andre the Giant, Killer Khan stretcher match. But those programs, they always had the logo. It was like Fukinama or something like that. They were owned by or a cooperative with Capital Wrestling Corporation. So to me, that generated, okay, there's a partnership or a cooperative going on with Japan with this, with the WWF at least. But NWA must have had something going on with them as well. Pro wrestling over there is a huge, huge deal.
Absolutely.
To Japanese fans. It's unbelievable.
So let's fast forward 46 years to 2019.
Joanne will love this one.
So NASCAR driver Kyle Busch defeated R-Truth to win the 24/7 championship.
Yep.
He later he ended up losing it back to Truth later on in that night, but then again he might as well have dropped it to Rosie O'Donnell at Panera Bread.
Rose is Panera Bread.
Unbelievable. I love their turkey wild rice soup or chicken wild rice soup.
Oh, they got some great soups.
Yeah, I like the bacon turkey. I do a bacon turkey bravo and the tomato.
Oh
soup.
yeah, the bacon turkey bravo and the soup. Yeah. That NASCAR. I knew when Kyle Busch. He was with Michael. What's Michael's last name? Joe Waltrip. He was with Michael Waltrip, and they were sitting ringside. And Waltrip actually is the one that I think got the referee shirt on and counted to 3 and declared Kyle Busch the champion. So that was kind of neat. That was crazy. That was was that down in Charlotte? Was that in North Carolina? Because they were down there for racing or something. Something was going on there. They were close by.
Yeah, probably in a racing town.
Yeah. So I mean, that was again 24/7 championship. You get anybody and anyone can win it. So that was I say bring that title back. I think it's very entertaining.
Absolutely.
Especially with R-Truth returning to the WWE.
Yes, correct.
So I think they need to bring it back. Unbelievable stuff there.
On December 3rd, 1991, San Antonio, Texas, home of Shawn Michaels, WWE presents this Tuesday in Texas, and they wanted to experiment with a midweek pay-per-view, but based on the attendance, which was about 8,000, and pay-per-view buys, which is about 140,000, they quickly abandoned this experiment. And in this main event, Hulk Hogan pinned The Undertaker after throwing ashes from Paul Bearer's urn into Taker's face. And always on the spot, WWF Commissioner Jack Tunney declared the title vacant and would be settled at the Royal Rumble the following month.
Right. I love that. WWF Commissioner Jack Tunney. He was always involved in a storyline. You gotta love it. Gotta love it. Yeah, I did. I'll be honest with you. I didn't watch this. I didn't see it. I read about it. I saw it later on.
Same here. Yeah, I did not
Tuesday night pay-per-view, 3-hour program. And you have to buy. You had to buy those pay-per-views back then. You didn't watch it online or anything like that. You had to buy that.
Yeah,
That's a big investment. For
I
Tuesday.
wanted it. My parents wouldn't let me get it. I was a kid.
School night, no way. Unbelievable. All right, so I'm up next. December 3rd, 2000, New York. This was interesting. ECW Massacre on 34th Street at the Hammerstein Ballroom at the Manhattan Center in New York City. They announced the attendance was around 2,600, pay-per-view buys, 390,000. They're saying it's grossly exaggerated. You never know. I don't know if they even counted them like they do back, how they do nowadays. But anyways, the main event saw Steve Corino defeat Jerry Lynn and Justin Credible in a three-way dance to retain the ECW World Championship. This was the last ECW pay-per-view before the promotion seized up, believe it or not. Most wrestling experts out there said this was for an ECW show, kind of so-so. It did lack a lot of excitement. The card was action-packed. They had great matches and so forth, but it lacked that character that ECW had in prior years with the destruction and so forth. One thing I noticed that, ironically, this pay-per-view was held at the Hammerstein Ballroom at the Manhattan Center, which used to be the home of WWF Monday Night Raw.
Right, that's right.
So that's kind of neat. And, of course, less than 3 years later, Vince buys ECW. So I think this might have been the beginning of Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon's partnership. Somewhere along the line, this came together, and, you know, they revived the ECW gimmick in WWF, in the WWE and so forth. And, of course, Heyman is introduced to the company, and he remains here today. So, this was a huge card for them. Obviously, the Take Massacre on 34th Street was built on, Miracle on 34th Street and so forth. But, it's one of those pay-per-views where, I tried to do some research. I couldn't actually find how many buys they had and so forth. But nonetheless, ECW always had a strong following. I'll be honest with you. I went to an ECW card only based on the fact that one of my buddies said he stayed up until, because they had like a 2 a.m. time slot up in the Northeast. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to watch ECW, they weren't prime time or anything.
And then it moved to midnight.
So, yeah, they were like a cult show. I mean, they had a strong following. And I had a friend, John Corkery, who had an ECW shirt. I'm like, what's that all about? We ended up going to one of the armories down the street, and I got Sabu flying over the top rope, landing on my lap. And I'm like, this is crazy. And Tommy Wildfire Rich shows up, and he's blading himself to death. He's bleeding like mad. And this is like at an armory with probably, I would say, 500 to 700 people tops.
Wow.
And it was a cult following. ECW was its own entity. And how that promotion did not last longer, I have no idea. But
this pay-per-view
Tommy Dreamer, all those guys.
This pay-per-view was one of the reasons the ECW went under. This was the one where Paul was falling behind and paying everybody, and they decided to withhold the payments from him, and that's what he said. Right. And ultimately cost the company. So this was this event.
Yeah, and of course they were the cutting edge of hardcore wrestling. I mean, one of my guests back in the day was Francine, the queen of ECW.
Oh, yeah.
And that table bump she took, with Balls Mahoney and all those guys, that was insane. I mean, you never saw a woman scantily clad go through a table. And Joey Styles almost lost his voice, screaming and yelling, "Oh, my God." It's ringing in my head, "Oh, my God." And you didn't see that. You had to watch ECW for that. And that transcended over to WCW in the WWE, and they started getting hardcore. And we talked about the Hardcore Championship, and those innovative matches happened. ECW was extreme in all aspects, and obviously behind the scenes they were extreme as well, because like you said, Paul Heyman not paying his guys and so forth, and the money wasn't there, and marketing suffers, and that's how promotions go under. So you got to hand it to them. They were innovative. That company had it going on back then. They had a cult following, and they lasted 8 years, I think it was.
Do you think this would Stone Cold have become Stone Cold if the Sandman hadn't been smashing the beers over his head? I mean, you look at with the Hardy Boys, would they have been what they became if it weren't for the extreme stuff going on over in ECW? It really, I mean, it was
You go back to the early years too, with the Morocco had a run at the ECW Championship, Magnificent Morocco at the end of his career, and then you had Jimmy Superfly Snuka. He was champion at one time. They were trying to revive that feud. They were trendsetters. There's no doubt about it, but they were extreme. It was, like you said, Bruce, those guys, the Hardy Boys, everybody, they wouldn't probably exist today if it wasn't for ECW.
So, while we're on the subject of ECW, let's fast forward 6 years The WWE presents December to Dismember from the James Brown Arena. Only 4,800 people in attendance, and the announced pay-per-view buys was around 90,000, the lowest ever pre-network.
Wow.
The pay-per-view is regarded as one of the worst pay-per-views in professional wrestling history. The show won the worst show of 2007 because it was too late to be considered for the 2006 voting. So,
Wow.
Yeah, this was...
It was so bad they saved it.
So
They saved the award for them.
WWE at this point was on that little bit of a downward spiral. They were trying to transition out of the Attitude Era into that, trying to re-become PG again. And at this point, I don't know about you guys, this is when I kind of pulled away from wrestling a little bit because there was less and less stuff out there for me. It wasn't geared towards me anymore.
Right.
When you look at the this was them, trying to redo ECW. They didn't do, when they rebranded ECW, they didn't do it right in the first place. This was just another trial that didn't work. When you look at the matches, you had Steven Richards and defeated Rene Dupree. This was the match of the night for me. The Hardy Boys against Eminem. I think Eminem is an underrated tag team out there. You had Balls Mahoney defeated Matt Stryker. Elijah Burke and Sylvester Turkey defeated Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke. Davari, the Great Khali, defeated Tommy Dreamer. Kevin Thorne and Ariel defeated Mike Knox and Kelly Kelly. And the main event was Bobby Lashley winning the Elimination Chamber, defeating Big Show, Test, Rob Van Dam, Hardcore Holly, and CM Punk.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It sounds like a December not to remember.
Yeah.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Well, that's where WWF was at that time. It really, it was. Yeah. It was going downhill, and I would say it's the women are what started the. I don't know. I think WWF getting back on the momentum, and now they're a force to be reckoned with. I have a feeling, it's going to be more and more mainstream this year than we've seen in 20 years.
Yep. A quick story though with WWE merging, doing the ECW gimmick and all that. My interview with Queen of Extreme Francine back in the day, she was talking about how she wasn't being used because Vince didn't even know she was signed with the company. She went up to her and introduced herself to him, and finally he's like, "Oh, okay, so we'll have to get you in somewhere." And that's kind of how a lot of the talent was treated then. There really was that ECW WWE merger where, you're trying to combine two organizations together. And to me, it's a confusing pay-per-view. It's like, who's who and what's what? Like, what are we watching here? And December to Dismember, not to remember, I guess, is what we should be calling it.
Yeah. December, I don't want to remember. Right.
I don't even remember this. I mean, I pulled back from WWE at this time. And I think the stock was going up too, right? Didn't they start go public and all that? That's when everything had to turn away from the violence and all that. They had to go back to that PG thing and had to be almost say your prayers and eat your vitamins type thing.
Yeah. Well, hey, we got through we got through our first edition of Wrestling Remembered, but the recently rebranding this week in pro wrestling history. Joe, thank you for coming on. It's awesome. Thank you for being here. I can't wait to work with you again next week.
Benny, what a day.
Benny, it's always a pleasure. So what do you guys have to plug before we get out of here?
What a Day in Centerville goes live, 7 o'clock on Facebook, 8 o'clock Eastern time. You can reach me at What a Day in Centerville on Facebook and YouTube as well. So tune into that. You might like the intro on this one. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, don't forget, that's tonight, everybody. That tonight Central Time. Benny, what do you got going on there?
Got Dan and Benny in the Ring every Tuesday night. We record at 7 o'clock. It's usually uploaded on Podbean by about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then on the Monty and the Pharaoh YouTube channel by the following day on Wednesday. And then, the True Crime podcast, we try to do it we're trying to do it like every other Monday. We just did Ronald DeFeo, the Amityville Horror, and our next episode, which should be fun, is going to be about Tamara Sitch, Sunny.
Because there you go.
She's a criminal and it's wrestling. So and strike while the iron's hot.
Unbelievable. Talk about a downfall. Unfortunately, that story's been played out many times. But she's going to have 17 more years to think about what's going on with her life and so forth. So that's going to be painful. It's painful. A lot of hurt there. A lot of people online are not happy with the verdict too. They thought she was getting off very easy for what happened, what transpired during that night in Fort Lauderdale. So,
even if she gets out like 10, 12 years, I mean, I'm not really okay with it, but I mean, that's a lot of time. As long as there's no way she ever gets behind the wheel of a car again. That's something I care
well, her
about.
license is permanently revoked. So,
right. But I mean, that hasn't stopped her in the past.
True.
That's what I'm worried about. Like
I said, she got 17 years to think about what happened.
Hopefully, hopefully she.
America does like a good comeback story. She's had several comebacks, but they haven't turned out so well. So we're probably going to have to wait a decade or so to see if she makes a comeback.
Yeah. I mean, you always want to pull for people to do well. I mean, I don't want anything bad. I'd love it if she decided to, become a model citizen, and maybe when she gets out, maybe she does some charity work or something like that to try to redeem herself.
There has to be some redemption there because she is a WWE Hall of Famer. And she led that Divas revolution. She introduced us to the world of Divas. So you got to give her credit for that. But everything else, 2012 since she's been on a downward spiral.
Yeah,
so,
just a shame. Well, let's hope Joe does her good.
Like I said, America loves a good comeback story. So good luck.
So you can also catch the three of us tomorrow night on the 30, where we'll be competing against Phil DeCesare and trying to dethrone him.
We're getting him. I'm going to get him.
I'm calling one of you guys is going to be the new champion.
So let's hope. And next week we're going to have this week Wrestling Remembered, another edition of that, and hopefully we're going to be live so that we can interact in the chat with you guys. So that should be fun. Yeah. And got to say, Player, what a day! It's been a blast. And Player, why don't you take us out of here?
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
What a day.
Later.